Okay. Welcome, everyone. I think I'm live. So this is good. I'm so excited to be here with you all. For those of you that can join me live, um, tonight's topic is very near and dear to my heart and integral to my own healing journey. Coming out of shame is essentially the place where true healing begins. For those of you that are new to this channel, my name is Sabrina Rising. I am a self-mastery mentor, an intuitive guide, and I have been helping people achieve deep and meaningful and sustainable inner peace for many, many years. The work that I teach and what I offer here is very much a byproduct of my own healing journey. So I had to help myself come out of shame in order to be able to pave the way to a more loving, more healthy relationship with myself first, and then again, ultimately with everyone around me. So my goal tonight is really just to talk about my direct experience with shame and to talk about how shame gets created and how it can store itself in our bodies, in our belief system, and ultimately affect the way that we relate to ourselves and the way that we relate to the rest of the world around us. And so shame is toxic. To say that there is toxic shame is kind of a redundant statement. Shame is toxic. And so when it stays in our bodies, it creates a lot of toxic thinking, toxic behavior, and it can create toxicity at the physical level as well. So we can experience physical symptoms when we absorb and hold on to shame. So let's talk about how shame gets created. In early childhood, when we're all, we come into being, we come in as whole, perfect, and complete, right? And our caregivers, through no fault of their own, they go to work on conditioning us. And I say through no fault of their own, I'm being generous. There are some caregivers that are better equipped to raise us than others. So if you had a difficult childhood, and if you had, caregivers that were neglectful or abusive, or, just really didn't help you meet your needs, you will have experienced shame. In fact, I will say very simply put that shame is the result of an unmet need. Okay. In fact, all of our dis-ease and discomfort is really deeply rooted in unmet needs. Now, to say that shame is a result of unmet needs is also a very general statement. So what does this actually look like? So as I was saying, when we come into being, we come in as whole, perfect, and complete, and our caregivers go to work on, raising us. They go to work on imposing their values, imposing their views of the world, their beliefs. The way that they talk to us is ultimately the way we end up talking to ourselves. And so in early childhood, if you experienced feeling rejected, feeling blamed, feeling laughed at, feeling highly criticized or judged in any way, right? Then you will have internalized your need for love, your need for validation, your need for approval. And this is what creates the experience of shame. So as children, we look to our caregivers for approval. We look to our caregivers to say, am I doing it right? Am I okay? Are you happy with me? Am I a good person? Am I a special person? Am I someone who's lovable? This is natural for human beings to look and to depend upon our caregivers for approval. We depend on them for survival, right? And our emotional survival is really contingent upon our experience of ourselves as lovable, as worthy. And if you are expressing a need and the need is unmet, that need becomes internalized. And then whenever you have that need come up again and again and again, which is natural, right? Let's say you have a need to be seen, or a need to feel heard, or a need to feel valued or acknowledged or approved of, which is normal. Human beings, we have these needs, several thousands of times throughout the day. We, especially as little kids, right? We're always looking to show our parents what we've done, or to, have them make a comment or evaluate us. And then we enter into the school system, which does the exact same thing. It starts to evaluate our performance. It starts to evaluate if we're smart, if we're not smart, if we fit into the mold of what is this external metrics that decides if we're smart or not smart, or if we're good enough or not good enough. And so ultimately, ultimately, as we learn to measure ourselves up against the feedback that we're receiving, if it's not the feedback that's consistent with the way we want to feel about ourselves, we start to experience shame. Right. And so this starts in very, very early childhood. It starts at home. If your parents neglected your needs or didn't meet them in some way, perhaps they were abusive, perhaps you felt humiliated. So many of us that dealt with early childhood abuse, if it was violence or even sexual abuse or any type of mistreatment of the self, will result in shame of self. It will result in self-hatred. And deep, deep self-hatred is what creates this experience of shame, right? We feel that we've done our parents wrong, or we don't fit in, or we don't belong. And so we start to internalize this experience of shame. And this can be very, very painful to live this way, okay? And shame, again, becomes internalized. And it stays in our bodies. Shame becomes systemic and ultimately toxic to our well-being. And in order to be able to come out of shame, we have to first realize that we are feeling ashamed of ourselves, right? So in order to compensate for this experience of shame, as we grow up, we start to develop an identity, right? So in early childhood, we come into, our families as whole, perfect, and complete beings. We go through this conditioning process where our parents start to impose their values. They start to impose, how they view us, how they see us, how they view the world, as I mentioned earlier. And now the identity is formed, right? And that identity can be filled with shame based on the way that we were received or not received by our parents, right? Perhaps, and some of the ways in which we compensate for shame, which I'll talk about in a second. We have deep shame. We find different ways to express the shame, right? So we can compensate for it by becoming rigid and perfectionistic and judgmental of other people and impossible to please and so on. So if these are some of the attributes that you experienced in your own life, then chances are you have some deep, deep unresolved shame within yourself, about yourself. In fact, the way we feel about ourselves is always how we impose this view on other people. We impose how we feel about ourselves onto our relationships, onto the circumstances of our lives. And so as we live with this stored shame in our bodies, it starts to affect our psyche, right? In fact, if the way we view ourselves is inconsistent with the way we experience ourselves, that incongruency between the way I see myself and the way I experience myself is where the neuroses is formed. Right? That's where, if I have a natural impulse to express something and it becomes rejected or shunned or dismissed or shut down, I experience shame. Right. And then again, every time I have that impulse to express or share or want to, speak up or express myself, I'm going to re-experience that shame. Right. And so because I become afraid of not wanting to feel that way, I become, I don't want to experience that. That's so painful to experience that. I start to shut down and I start to create an identity that will compensate for the way I feel about myself, for the shame that I'm storing in my body. Okay. And so for those of you that already know that you have shame stored in your body, that you have ways in which you express yourself that feel shameful to you, here's the thing. If you're engaging in self-destructive behaviors, if you are for example, someone who does things that you feel ashamed of, you act out impulsively, or you have coping mechanisms that are destructive, or you do things that are damaging to yourself and to other people, when we stop to think about why do I do these things? Why can't I stop myself from doing these things? It's because there is a deep experience of shame happening on a subconscious level. So shame feels normal. Right. So when we go long periods of time without something to activate the shame or to feel ashamed of, we will unconsciously create ways in which we can re-experience the shame, because this is what feels normal. And so, as I was mentioning earlier around early childhood, the belief that I'm a shameful person and this feeling of shame gets stored in the cellular memory, gets stored and we create a subconscious belief around it. And so now we live into this reality, right, by recreating experiences that are shameful. And we do this in our adult life as we, exit the early childhood phase, and we move into the phase of individuation, and we move into the phase of expressing ourselves as adults. We now start to act out in ways that are shameful. In fact, shame as an overall level of consciousness is very, very low on the vibrational scale. And so if you are living in shame, then your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, the only thoughts, feelings, and behaviors that are accessible to you are ones that are shameful. So if you're living in shame, you're going to feel ashamed of yourself, and you're going to choose behaviors and patterns of behaviors and ways of operating and relationships and experiences that allow you to feel more shame. Okay. And I myself struggled with shame for many, many years. In my early childhood, I felt unapproved of. I felt like I wasn't perfect enough, or I wasn't good enough. And my shame expressed itself in the form of eating disorder behavior, in the form of addiction, in the form of self-abuse. And so, it can express itself in so many ways, right? We can take our shame out on ourselves, on our bodies. We can take it out on other people. We can take it out on animals. If you look at children that are cruel to other kids, or cruel to animals, or just, acting out, lashing out, it's because they are being shamed, right? They're holding and carrying a deep experience of shame within themselves on a cellular level. And so, they have to act it out, right? Because this is what feels normal to them. This is how they've been conditioned. So, if you are listening to this conversation and you're sitting there going, okay, so how did I experience shame, right? The first place I would look is in your childhood environment, right? Were your needs met, right? And when I say needs, were you met with non-judgment? Right? Were you met with acknowledgement? Were you met with approval? Were you met with unconditional love? So many of us were not. And this is a varying scale of, how many, the degree of shame that we experienced. Some of us were deeply abused and deeply ridiculed and deeply ostracized in our early childhood environments, and perhaps even in our early school life. Okay, so that's the first place you want to look, is, did I feel a sense of belonging? Did I feel welcome? Did I feel loved? Did I feel safe? Did I feel like I could express my needs and have them be met, right? If you didn't experience that, then that's where you would have started to experience shame. Shame in who you are. It can be shame in your body. It can be shame in how you look and how you speak, or how you perform, how we are received in whatever it is that we are trying for the first time. Think about the first time somebody laughed at you, or the first time you made a mistake, or the first time you didn't do well on a test, or the first time that you were not picked for a sport or a team, or no one asked you out to the prom, or think of moments like that when you would have felt that experience of shame. It always revolves around rejection, dismissal, denial, and ultimately unmet needs. And the needs that we all have are the needs to be loved and approved of and welcome and feel a sense of belonging, right? And so shame is at the bottom of the scale. It's very, very, very low energy, low vibrational, and it can express itself in very ugly, dark, destructive ways. And so the way to come out of this shame, the way to start healing, the first thing we need to do is talk about it, right? If you ever heard the expression, we are as sick as our secrets, okay? The first thing we need to do is start talking about whatever it is that we feel ashamed of. It can be something that we've done in our past, something that we're doing now, so a behavior that we're engaging in, something that we feel not proud of. And keep in mind, judgment is not something that we're born into, right? We're born whole, perfect, and complete. And so judgment is something that we learn because of the way that our parents raise us. Our parents judge us, and so we then judge ourselves, right? We experience judgment, we experience criticism, we experience being labeled and diagnosed by our parents, by our caregivers, by society. And so then we proceed to take on those values. We proceed to judge and diagnose ourselves, right? And so this is normal. So again, the way to come out of shame is to start talking about it. Right? It's just to find a safe place, whether it's a guide or a support group or a therapist or a trusted friend, someone that you can start talking to about what it is that you're ashamed of. The way to heal shame is to speak about it and have whatever it is you're sharing be met with unconditional love and acceptance. It's really pretty basic, although it can seem very scary and very difficult to take on. When we start talking about the thing that we're ashamed of, and it's met without judgment, which judgment is what created the shame in the first place, it's met with unconditional love and compassion and empathy. Empathy is the healing balm for all of our pain, all of our woes, all of our dis-ease, emotional, physical, mental. When we start to receive empathy for our experience, for our unmet needs, now we start to heal the shame. Now we start to learn to love and accept ourselves, to be more comfortable with who we are. When we start to feel, and then we start to feel more confident, right? We start to feel safer in our expression because we have a person or some people or a group or whoever it is supporting us to hear us and to accept us as we are, right? And so this is so prevalent in our society. We judge each other, we judge ourselves, we diagnose each other, we diagnose ourselves. And when we do that, we create this separation between me and you. We create this feeling of we're not connected. Somehow you're better than me, or I'm not as good as you, or I don't belong. And, we're not, we don't have the same needs. And none of that's true. All human beings experience the same fundamental need for belonging, for love, for compassion, for connection, for community, for support, for understanding, to be seen, right, and heard. We all have the same fundamental needs. And so if we keep that in mind and we seek out like-minded people that can hear us, for example, if you're acting out your shame, which is what we do when it's stored in the body, we act it out, right? Which is actually, if you're doing things that you're ashamed of, by the way, it's normal and it's actually healthy for you to act out your shame, because at least you are expressing it. You're expressing it. Sorry, I have a candle burning. You're expressing it. You're getting it out of your system. You're just following along the patterns of behavior that are in your subconscious mind. This is what the subconscious mind is telling me to do. This is what feels normal. Okay, so this is just all that's happening. You're not a bad person. You're not a sick person. You're a wounded person who doesn't have access to a better choice or to a more loving relationship with yourself, which would then in turn give you access to better choices. So I just really want to give you some empathy right now, wherever you are in your own process, in your own life. If you're acting out in ways that feel shameful to you, it's completely normal. It's completely normal. And the reason you keep perpetuating this behavior is because you don't have access to another choice, right? And so again, if we find a safe place to talk about our shame, perhaps it's a group of people or a person who has experienced the same behavior, who has experience with whatever it is that you're going through, that can really hear you with unconditionally loving ears and empathy and compassion, then we start to feel like, okay, I'm not so isolated anymore. I'm not so different. I'm not such a bad person. If other people are acting this way, then now I'm starting to come out of my shame slowly but surely. As I keep being met with unconditional love, I am capable of healing myself, and I'm capable of loving myself, and I'm capable of making better choices that I don't feel so ashamed of. There's a reason why, for example, there's a 12-step movement that is helping so many people with addictions. And the most healing component of that 12-step movement is to be able to talk about all the damage that you think you caused and all the things that you think that you're ashamed of, essentially, and to have that expression be met with unconditional love and unconditional acceptance. And that's why that process works for so many people. It is the experience of feeling welcome and accepted. No matter what happened, no matter what I did, I'm still worthy of love. Right. And it's in the early stages of healing, if you are in this deep, dark, abyss of shame, and I call it an abyss because it's such a low vibrational place to be, and it's such a painful place to be, coming at being able to anchor yourself with other people who can really support you and really see you and offer that experience of empathy and unconditional love and compassion is huge. That's life changing. Right. And it was life changing for me to find, like-minded people who were struggling like I was, people who wanted deeper answers, who just wanted to feel loved and seen and supported, just like I did. And when I had that experience, I started to gain confidence and I started to grow spiritually. I started to mature emotionally and I started to make healthier choices. Okay. Once we start to move up in terms of levels of consciousness, once we start to transcend shame and move into fields that have more energy, for example, courage and willingness and an open heart and a sense of personal responsibility as we develop our self-confidence, then now we have access to better choices, right? This is natural. As we evolve, now we start to have access to, I don't want to choose something that's going to hurt me, or I'm not going to choose this behavior if it's going to make me feel bad, because I don't want to feel like that version of myself anymore, right? So this takes work and it takes healing. Coming out of shame is not something we can do on our own. Okay, it's something that we actually really need support with. So again, whether you choose to work with a guide or a therapist or a group or a trusted friend, start talking about it. Okay, because shame, when it's stored in the body, becomes very, very toxic over time. We can see that shame, again, as a very, very low vibrational energy, it can start to create this disease in the body, right? And so we have, it can create, like I said, all kinds of neurosis, insomnia, digestive issues. It can create all kinds of physical symptoms that are difficult to deal with because we can't live with ourselves, right? And when we're living in shame, it's very hard to love and accept ourselves. It's impossible. We don't have access to it. And so again, it creates physical discomfort. So finding ways to talk about it is the first step. Okay. Learning to sit with your feelings would be the second step. Now, this takes some courage, right? And so in the early stages, if you're in deep shame and if you're currently acting out in shameful ways, this may not be accessible to you. So it's important to find an anchor, to find someone you can talk to find someone who can support you, and to find a safe place that can teach you self-acceptance. Okay, that's ultimately what we're looking for. And so once you've found that, then the next phase of healing would be to learn how to sit with your uncomfortable emotions. Really sitting with your discomfort and honoring yourself. So at first, in the early stages, we need other people to help us meet our needs, right? Just like we needed our parents, but they weren't there, right? So now we're looking for a new tribe, or we're looking for a new support system to help us meet our needs for unconditional love and unconditional acceptance. Once we have that, now we can sort of, and I don't want to say we sort of evolve past that, because we may always need support, and that's okay. Human beings are designed to connect with other humans. We're designed to feel not separate as we separate ourselves through judgment and diagnosis and analysis. We're designed to feel like we can recognize ourselves in other people, to have community, to have support, to have connection, right? We need connection. And so along with our support system, now this is giving us the strength to be able to sit with ourselves and give ourselves empathy. Now I can learn to meet my own needs, right? And if you have ever done the work with me one-on-one or in one of my group programs, this is the place we start. I guide you into sitting with your discomfort, into your feelings, so that you can learn to love and accept yourself as you are. You can learn to sit in your shame and learn to acknowledge it wherever it's stored in the body. And again, ultimately, we practice radical self-love and self-acceptance. That's how you come out of shame, right? So now you're learning to meet your own needs. And with practice over time, whenever you notice the tendency to judge yourself, or the tendency to feel embarrassed, or the tendency to feel afraid of experiencing shame, think of all the things that you've protected yourself from or guarded yourself from throughout the course of your life because you didn't want to experience shame, right? This is what we do as early as children. As early as childhood, we develop these coping skills where we avoid experiencing shame. We run and hide, we act like we're shy. We don't want to be seen. We don't want to be heard, all because of the way that we've experienced being received, right? So So think about that as you're sitting with your shame, is that you to really go back to those places, those early childhood memories, and learn to love and accept that version of you that just wanted to feel seen, heard, loved, accepted, and a deep sense of belonging. Okay, so this is how we come out of shame. Find support, and then find someone who can guide you, and then learn how to give your own, how to meet your own need for empathy, for unconditional love, and for unconditional acceptance. And ultimately, we can now start to choose a new way of operating, a new way of living that allows us to have more confidence. Right now, we feel more free and we feel more healthy, and we've dissolved a lot of this. Pain that we're carrying in our bodies, because ultimately shame is very, 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 very painful. I know for myself, I had a lot of shame around my own eating disorder behavior when I was a young teenager and well into my early 20s. And it wasn't until I started talking about it and started acknowledging it and started relating to it, and seeing that there was other people in the world that were going through this, that I was able to really sit with it and go, okay, what need is this meeting, right? Because whatever you're choosing, whatever pattern of behavior you're choosing, if you're engaging in something destructive, it can be, through dating, it can be through your relationship to money, whether it's your relationship to food, your body, your relationship to your kids, whatever, however your shame is expressing itself in your life today, you really want to understand that that behavior is meeting a need, right? It's meeting a much deeper need, and that need can simply just be to feel congruent, right? If you're holding a lot of shame on a cellular level and it's in your subconscious and you haven't healed it from early childhood, it's natural for you to want to express that shame and to act out in ways that are shameful, because that's what feels normal, as I mentioned earlier. So again, learning to talk about it and learning to share it with other people, and coming out of it, experiencing that sense of relief where it's not a secret that you have to hold on to anymore. You can come out of the closet and start to share what it is that you're struggling with, and find other people that are there with you, holding that the energy of unconditional love and acceptance with you is huge. That would be the first place I start. And then again, as we continue this work, we learn how to meet our own needs for empathy and for compassion. And this, of course, is a lifelong practice, right? And so you might find that you experience little bits of shame here and there, again and again. That's okay. This is normal. This is human, right? What's most important is that we learn how to accept ourselves. One of the exercises that I do with a lot of the women that I work with is, in terms of body shame, is to simply just be in front of the mirror. You can be clothed, you can be naked, but just to be in front of the mirror and to hold your gaze, right? To hold your gaze, to view every part of yourself with radical, unconditional love and acceptance, right? Just hold your gaze until you stop cringing, until you can soften the inner critic and let go of the judgments, and just feel love and gratitude and appreciation for the way you look, for the body that you have, for this vessel that is you, for the parts of you. And it can be something that goes beyond the physical as well. It can be finding radical, unconditional love and acceptance for the person that you are, for the choices that you made, for the mistakes that you made in the past, which again are just behaviors and strategies to meet needs, right? For wherever it is you are in your life, for your financial circumstances, or whatever state you find yourself in. If you can meet your own gaze with unconditional love and radical self-acceptance, you can start to come out of shame. And of course, this is entirely up to you. The quality of your life is in your hands. If anyone is here with me live, I have never taken questions before, but I'm happy to take questions if anyone would like to ask me anything. Okay, let's see. Okay, here we go. Comments. Here we go. It is so rewarding to listen to this brilliant woman. Thank you. Let me see here. Here we go. Hi, Bo. How can we as parents now avoid inflicting shame or sparking shame within our children? This is a great question. Thank you. Um, Here we go. Okay, I'm learning how to use the system, so thank you for your patience. So the way that we avoid in inflicting shame on our children is simply to meet them where they are. Right, is to keep in mind that whatever experience they're having or whatever it is that they're expressing, we want to refrain from judging. Right, as parents, we naturally want our children to perform well, to do what we want them to do, to fall in line or to behave a certain way. It's very important to meet them where they are and to acknowledge that whatever behavior that they're expressing is actually meeting a need for them. It may not be the behavior that we want them to have, but it's meeting a deeper need for them. And so to get curious about what need is being met in that behavior, and trying to meet them with understanding and empathy. Right. So empathy, unconditional love, and acceptance is how we avoid inflicting shame on our children. Of course, I invite you to give yourself grace because nobody is perfect at this. I'm also finding myself with my own daughter, making sure that I create an environment of unconditional love and acceptance. And it's really about just sitting with our own need for perfection, or our own need for things to go a certain way, and letting that go. And the more we release that within ourselves, the more we can create an environment of grace and ease and acceptance for our children. Good. Is this a question? So rewarding. Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Okay. Well, thank you so much for watching. And if you feel moved to have there is another question here. Here we go. I came in late. Support with others. Where and how? Okay, so where and how do you recommend finding such people? I haven't encountered anyone like this in my life besides in spurts. Okay, Amy. So if you have a sincere intention, the question is, where do I find people to support me? If you have a sincere heart's desire to be supported and you put that out there, you will find people to help you. Right. So it really depends on if there's a specific thing that you want support with. If there is a specific behavior or a specific pain, area of pain that you want support with, there is tons of resources online. There are tons of books available as well. I mean, if you are open to it, I'm happy to. I'm happy to offer you my website. You can go to my website and look through my work and see if there's any of that resonates for you. When we are ready, the teacher shows up. Right, when we are ready for help and we're ready to really deal with whatever issue it is that we have, we have the internet at our fingertips. All these resources are available. We start to look and we start to find like-minded people that are like us, that are willing to offer support. So I hope that's helpful to you. Thank you so much for joining me, everyone. I'm going to wrap up this talk. And if you would like to explore my work, my website is pinned at the bottom, and so is the link to book a free consultation with me. I'm happy to serve you, and I'm happy to help you find the healing that you are so desiring on your journey. May all beings be happy, peaceful, and free.